Chapter 21. "Can't think what they're waiting for," said the Brigadier. Jeremy was finding it difficult to concentrate. Although the disorientating effects of the blip juice were starting to wear off, they were being replaced by a throb behind the eyes, which felt as if there were a drig ball in progress inside his head. Having been hustled from the courtyard back to the suite, they had been locked in, with a guard outside the door and a promise from Freeth that he would return. "Now, you won't go away, will you?" he said winsomely. "Do forgive me for deserting you. I'm sure you'll find some way of amusing yourselves." Quite a decent chap, really, thought Jeremy. Not like that other gink with the wobbly blue face. "It's quite clear that they're frightened of the power that the President still has," said the Doctor in reply to the Brigadier. "Freeth has to convince his father that we've left Paracon before he can do anything final. It's probably too late tonight, so I expect we've got a few hours." Sarah seemed to be in a bit of a state, thought Jeremy. "Doctor, please," she said. "We've got to do something about Captain Rudley. They're going to kill him." "Oh, law." "Yes, of course. Waldo. Forgotten about him." "They're going to dispose of us all," replied the Doctor. What? Whatever for?" "Why?" said Jeremy, pressing a hand to his forehead to steady the beat. "We have it in our power to stop the Paracon Corporation operating on Earth. They're not going to give up a treaty worth billions without a murmur," answered the Doctor. As he spoke, he was inspecting the windows, which were similar to the ones in the other suite, showing the view of the lake. "Not even real windows," he said. "In any case, we're on the 4th floor, and as I remember, it's a sheer drop. Have a look round, all of you. See if there's another way out. A fire escape, a ventilator shaft, anything." They scattered into the surprisingly large number of rooms. Jeremy found himself in a sort of sub-suite, like a little flatlet, probably intended for a valet or lady's maid or whoever, thought Jeremy, as he ferreted through the cupboards. A quick search revealed nothing helpful. He sat down on the bed. If he held his head very still, it settled to a steady ache, which was almost tolerable. He heard the murmur of voices. Evidently the others had had no more success than he had. "We shall have to think of something else," he heard the Doctor saying. "For instance?" That was the Brigadier. "Well, we could—" The Doctor's voice trailed away. "Yes?" said Sarah. "If we—" The Doctor started again, and stopped again. "What?" A minor explosion from the Doctor. "Look, it's all very well gazing up at me like spaniel puppies waiting for a lump of sugar. Everybody's blessed with a modicum of cerebral tissue after all, eh? Now come on, think." "Good idea. Trust the Doctor. If they all had a bit of a think—" Jeremy lay back onto the bed and closed his eyes in order to concentrate better. Now then, to assess the position. They were locked in upstairs, with the TARDIS downstairs, though come to think of it, there didn't seem to be any stairs, only lifts. The 4th floor was connected to the ground floor by one set of lifts, and the ground floor was connected to the knee bone, and the knee bone was connected to the leg bone. Night-night, Jeremy. The chamber in which Waldo Rudley was incarcerated was not the traditional dungeon of the fairy tales, or even the bleak brick cell of a long-term prison. Having other methods, more efficient and more permanent, of dealing with their delinquents, the Paraconian security forces were content to contain their temporary prisoners in rooms not unlike those of a cheap rooming house. True, there were bars on the windows and manacles chained to the wall, ready for the potentially violent, but the decorations were clean and simple, and the furnishings adequately comfortable. There were even pictures on the wall, firmly screwed down and with unbreakable glass. These depicted, in garish colour, with an egregious use of red, the various fates which might be in store for the current tenant. The temperature was always that of a mild spring day, and the food was reasonable, although most of it was apt to end up in the dustbin. You'll waste away, said Tragan, looking at Waldo's untouched breakfast. That'll never do. Fattening me up for the kill, are you? Said Waldo, who was sitting on the bed. Crude, but accurate. Funny how these old expressions linger, isn't it? Tragan's face was a delicate mauve. The warts and boils moved gently up and down like scum on the surface of a polluted sea. I demand to see the President, said Waldo. I have that right, at least. No, replied the Vice-Chairman. You have no rights. You forfeited all rights when you chose to incite your fellow guests to treason. But that's ridiculous. We were just having a discussion. You seem to forget that we have a full ER recording of your offence, said Tragan patiently, as if explaining to a slow but willing child. Everything will be conducted according to the due process of law. That recording will be played immediately before the transmission of the carrying out of your sentence, so that justice may be seen to be done. Waldo laughed bitterly. You mean to frighten everybody into behaving themselves? You're uncommonly bright for a military man, Captain Radley. And what is my sentence? This question launched the Vice-Chairman into a quite lengthy disquisition on the various possibilities. His own preference, it seemed, would be to see the captain slowly dismembered by a curious crangel ape, or chewed to death by a swarm of soldier chaise, either of which could eventuate while he was being hunted. More certain destinies, such as the old-fashioned mincing machine, could easily be arranged should he refuse the hunt. And, of course, and here the Vice-Chairman displayed a certain reluctance, the law granted him the privilege of choosing to volunteer as a combatant in the games. Kill or be killed, said Waldo. You are being offered a strong chance of survival, said Tragan disapprovingly. Some last for years. The present favourite for the final, this Genhegger, for example. So he won last night, did he? That makes 73 he's finished off. He stood up and walked to the window looking out at the high blue sky. Murder as a way of life somehow doesn't appeal, he went on. I may be a fool, but I'm not a hypocrite. Tragan gazed at the hated back. Death before dishonour, he said. How very noble. Jeremy, wake up! Jeremy opened his eyes. He sat up and stretched. I wasn't asleep, he said to Sarah, who was standing in the doorway. I just shut my eyes for a moment. It helps me think, you see. Oh, Jeremy, she said, it's morning. You've been asleep for hours. Oh. He got off the bed and walked over to her. Do you think they'll bring us some breakfast? He caught sight of her expression as she turned back into the main room of the suite. Huh, elder sister stuff again. All very well, but he didn't get anything at the party, except that blip juice, of course. He winced, and then found it was unnecessary. The pain had gone, thank goodness, but he was certain he was rattling inside. We've got more to worry about than cornflakes, Sarah said. She lowered her voice and glanced across the other side of the room where the doctor was standing, looking out at the lake that wasn't there. I don't think he's been asleep all night, she said. He's just been walking up and down like a caged lion, supplied Jeremy. Spoken like a true journalist, she said, to his surprise. She wasn't usually so complimentary. Still, she went on, they say a cliché is a cliché because it works. Yes, just like a caged lion, a very unhappy caged lion. The doctor swung round and moved over towards the door as though listening. The brigadier rose from his easy chair and cocked his head. Yes, quite right. There was a noise, the sound of voices, and the clink of crockery. Breakfast? The door slid open, and a guard appeared, gun in hand. "Right, you lot, get back. Back!" As soon as he was satisfied, he turned and gave a jerk of his head. Anya Fargin appeared, pushing a sort of trolley, followed by another guard, who turned his back on the room, his gun ready. The food on the trolley, while by no means equaling the feast of yesterday, was a substantial collation for a prison breakfast. Jeremy could almost imagine that he could smell fried bacon. He could feel the saliva gathering in his mouth. It was true then. Your mouth really did water. "Listen here," the first guard was saying. "You stay back until I've closed the door again. Then you can stuff yourself silly for all I care. Got it?" "How could we resist such an elegant invitation?" said the doctor. Anya, who had wheeled the trolley well into the room, almost to the window, looked up with a worried expression. "Guard," she said sharply, "look at this." What had she found? Had the doctor been up to something? Surely she wouldn't give him away. "What is it?" said the first guard. "Come and see," she said. Whatever it was important. An amazing discovery, clearly. The guard, casting suspicious glances around, came slowly over to her. "I can't see anything," he said. No, she said impatiently. "Down there." She pointed to the angle of the wall under the window. The guard bent down and peered at the floor. With a sharp, controlled jab, not moving her hand more than 6 inches, Anya struck the bending man on the back of the neck. He collapsed, soundlessly. "Oh dear," said Anya. "Are you all right?" She turned to the door and called to the other security man. "Yed, I think he's fainted." The man moved into the doorway, staring uncertainly across the room. "Hi!" The doctor was, if anything, even faster than Anya had been. Yed went flying into an aerial somersault, which would have been quite a feat if he had been conscious of what he was doing. But he wasn't. He landed in a crumpled heap by Jeremy and Sarah. "I say," said Jeremy. "Oh, very neat, Doctor," said Anya. "I couldn't have done it better myself." "Who are you?" said the Brigadier. "No time for explanations now. Come on, fast as you like," said Anya, leading the way out of the suite at a fast clip. Another sister, thought Jeremy, and set off after them all, with a bitter farewell glance at the loaded trolley. It was the breakfast trolley, and the fact that the food on it was still hot, which told Freeth that the escape had taken place minutes rather than hours ago. In spite of the chairman's strictures on the efficiency of his security, Tragan's emergency system snapped into action. By the time the fugitives had reached the fly car park via the staff exit, the alarm bells were sounding. And even as Anya ushered them urgently onto a small blue fly car, almost pushing the trailing Jeremy, a guard appeared at the far end of the walkway. Without even pausing to challenge them, he raised his weapon and fired. With a cry of pain, Anya fell into the car. "He got my shoulder," she gasped, and as the Brigadier helped her into a seat, it was apparent that her right arm was hanging uselessly by her side. From the seat Sarah had scrambled into, she could see the guard running towards the car, with another close behind. It looked as if the escape was over almost before it had begun. But even as the thought crossed her mind, the strange whine of the engine, propulsion unit? Whatever, interrupted it. "Don't worry," said the doctor, his hands fastening onto the controls. "I can fly it. Here we go." And even faster than in Waldo's car, they shot out into the sunlight. All units, apprehend fugitives leaving the area of the presidential palace." The thin, distorted voice came from a speaker concealed in the control panel. "It's tuned to the frequency of the security patrols," said Anya. "And there's one now," she added, as the wail of a distant siren replaced the fading alarm bells. By this time, they had left the palace grounds and were flying over the streets of the city. The crescendo of the siren was joined by others converging on the park. Before Sarah could turn her head to look for the telltale purple of the security cars, the doctor spoke again. "I'll soon lose them," he said. "Hang on to your hats." It was like being in a rocket launch, like in all those old movies. Sarah felt herself slammed into the back of her seat, with her head pinned to the neckrest. Whether her face actually distorted with the G-force, that was what they called it, wasn't it? She had no idea. It certainly felt like it, particularly when, with gut-twisting effect, the doctor weaved his way through the seemingly snail-slow traffic meandering above the streets. In seconds, or minutes perhaps, time seemed to belong to another world. They had left behind the crowded blocks of shops and houses and were flying amongst the towering factories on the outskirts of the city. They slowed down to the speed of a record-breaking racing car. "Mind if we go back to get my stomach?" said Sarah. "I know what you mean," said the doctor. "I must admit, I didn't expect quite that speed." "Oh, there's supposed to be a limiter," said Anya. "But I removed the governor." "What a woman," said the brigadier. "Isn't there a risk of positive feedback in the helical particle generator?" said the doctor. "Not if you—" Anya started to reply. She looked at the doctor with astonishment. "You know these cars?" she said. "Have you been here before, doctor?" said the brigadier. "Why didn't you say?" No, he answered. "They're very like the skimmers we used to fly when I was a boy on Gallifrey. You never forget how to ride a bicycle, do you? Now then, where to?"